So hey everyone, in today's session we will be covering three things. What is Kafka? Why do we need Kafka? And how Kafka is implemented, right? Like what are the components of Kafka? So before we jumping into Kafka, let me ask you one question, right? So what we were doing in our previous classes, that we have one socket. It means we have one host and port, right? And this host and port is generating some real-time messages. And then we have our structured streaming application, where we are processing these messages, right? Now, and in fact, before we jump ahead, let me show you what I'm trying to convey here. So what we did, so what I'm doing, let me open one socket connection for you guys. So let's open this connection on this port using NC Netcat utility. So this connection is open, and let me consume these messages using my structured API. Okay, so let's do it, and let me change this directory, this console, and let's run it. Okay, so what we are doing, that we are creating some connection between this host and port and this particular program, right? So let's see in 1 second. So let it run. Okay, so it connected, right? So basically I won't be explaining this program, but what I'm trying to convey here, that okay, the connection has been established. So now if I'm minimizing this and I'm printing it something here, hello, 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 everything is coming here, right, in batches. But the problem here is, so basically everything is working fine. What I'm typing here is coming perfectly fine into my application. It means my streaming data is flowing perfectly fine into my Spark structured API. The problem occurs when there is some failure in either of the application. Let's say there is some failure here. So this, to mimic the failure, let me terminate this application for 2 minutes. Okay, and meanwhile let me, so what I'm seeing, the message is not coming. Obviously they won't come, right, because my application is not working. And since my application has stopped, let me run it again quickly. So what it will do, it will fail again because of some internal issue. Let's see if it's not failing. So what I'm trying to show you here, that these messages which I have typed, or which our streaming application has typed or sent while my consumer, or while my streaming application was down, have been lost. See, they have been lost, right? So when we see here, none of the messages which we typed while my application was dead, they have lost. So what this mean to us? Now let me go here. So it means that I have one application that is producing some messages into our case, into what I have mimicked. This application is a socket, right? And one application that is consuming your messages. Into our case, that application was structured streaming, right? Till now this application is sending messages here, and it is processing it, and we are seeing everything on our console. So when we say hello here, we are seeing hello here. When we say hi here, we are seeing hi here. Everything is working fine. The problem occurred when our structured API has failed. So what happened then when it was failed? When we are typing any messages, hello, hi, how are you, these particular messages are lost, right? Once we up this application, these messages are nowhere. So what this means, that we need one system which should sit somewhere in between, right? Which should sit somewhere in between here. So what ideally we want, that let's call this application as producer, because it is producing the messages, right? Let's call this application as consumer, because this was consuming the messages, right? And let's call this some queue. right? So what we are doing, we are producing the messages from socket. Those messages are stored here on the temp basis. So when we say hello here, that hello will be stored here. Hi will be stored here. And then this Spark structured streaming, let me close this quickly. This Spark structured streaming will read message from here. Now, even though this application is gone and we make it running after 2 minutes, we haven't lost any messages, right? Because this particular queue, this messaging queue, will still have those messages somewhere stored, right? So what are the benefits of having some message queue in between? First thing is decoupling or asynchronous messages. Like this application and this application do not need to be in sync, right? So this is first problem. The second problem with this approach, where there is no broker or no messaging queue in between, this is your producer, this is a consumer. The second problem is the producer and consumer needs to process the messages almost at the same rate. For example, if my producer is producing messages 100 messages per second, but my consumer can only able to consume 90 messages per second, what happened to 10 messages? They are lost, right? So it means if we don't have anything in between, this speed and this speed should be in sync, and that's not always possible because we cannot control the one system. We can only control our system, right? Because we are consumer or we are producer, we can only control one system. In that case also, we want somebody in between. That somebody is messaging queue, right? One more thing is, let's say we have right now what we are doing, we have one producer and we have one consumer. Producer is our socket application, consumer is our structured streaming, and there's one-to-one connection. But let's say we have 100 consumers or 100 structured streaming APIs. So what it gonna be doing? It will create 100 connections here like this: SS1, SS2, SS3. Then there will be a burden on this app, obviously, right? So this is the third problem, right? So now we came to know that we want something in between our producing application and consuming application. That something is called messaging queue, right? Messaging queue means in this system which is sitting between our producer and consumer has the capability to store the messages in queues, and our consumer can read the messages from the queues. So producer will put the message in queue and consumer will read the message from the queue, right? And this is your messaging queue, simple. So now we came to know that we need something in between for sure. One-to-one connectivity between producer and consumer is not a feasible or viable solution, okay? And that's where lot of companies came in, like did the research and developed lot of messaging queues. So one of them are RabbitMQ, if you guys heard of it, right? Then one other is IBM MQ, right? But these messaging queues were only sitting on a single machine. So it means, what I'm trying to say here, that we have a producer here. Let's say we have this IBM MQ here, and the producer is publishing messages or sending message to IBM MQ, and then consumer is consuming message from here. So what it means, if this producer is on today, that is 28th of August, if this messenger, if this producer is sending 1 million messages per minute, then if this machine is working fine, can we guarantee that this machine will be working fine in 10 million messages per minute? We cannot guarantee, because this is on the single machine. This is not a distributed machine. So make this machine work from 1 million to 10 million, we may need to add few other machines, right? IBM MQ, we need to add few other machines, and we need to do a lot of configuration to do this. We need to do your load balancer, then it will come here, it will go here. Lot of things we need to do, right? So that's where these machines or these softwares which these guys developed are not very feasible when we talk about large amount of data or when we talk about big data, right? That's where researchers created one more project. They called that project as Kafka. So now we came to know few things about Kafka without jumping into Kafka, that Kafka is nothing but a messaging queue, right? But this is distributed messaging queue. This thing we know about it now, right? And when we talk about messaging queue, there are few benefits. Why we created messaging queues? For decoupling, so that one application do not have to depend on the other application. Then asynchronous, so that one application can be asynchronously work without depending on the other application. Now let's jump into theory. So right now we know that Kafka is a messaging queue, and Kafka is a distributed messaging queue which can store messages. Producer will push the messages into the messaging queue and consumer will read the messages from the messaging queue, right? Now let's see. Before I jump to Kafka, let's think one more thing, that what the theory which I tell you, how we can read it in some definitive language or bookish language, right? So messaging queue enables asynchronous communication, which means that the endpoints that are producing and consuming messages interact with the queue, not with each other, right? So in simple terms, I have explained it, but let me draw it. Producer and consumer won't be talking to each other directly, rather than producer will be talking to MQ and consumer will be talking to MQ. So this is the first point. So what this means, that producer can add requests to the queue without waiting for them to be processed. So producer can push all the messages without worrying about that whether consumer is consuming it or not. It will push all the message into MQ, and consumer on its own will, on its own capacity, will read the messages, right? So it means your producer and consumer can work asynchronously. This communication is called asynchronous communication, and this is important in the distributed applications. Now, what are the benefits of this? There's so many benefits. The first benefit is it will increase the reliability. So our MQ, which is sitting in between our message queues, will be persisting your data. It means they will be storing the data into their memory for some time. What that some time is, we will come to know, but they will store the data. Okay, and that means if any of the system failed, if your consumer failed or if your producer failed, still when they will be alive again, they will have the message ready for the processing, right? So it will increase the fault tolerance, right? Even though one of the system is unreachable. It will simplify the decoupling. What it means, that message queue remove the dependencies between components and significantly simplify the coding of decoupled application. What this means, this is actually a very important point. So now into this case, right, when I was reading messages from my socket here, and what I'm doing here, I'm just communicating. When I'm coding, I'm copy pasting the whole host and port here, right? So my host and the port have been hard coded here, kind of. So it means there is one-to-one dependency between my source and the destination. If this port is lost or kind of stopped, then my whole application will stop working. There is no duplicacy, there's no redundancy, there's no fault tolerance, right? Simple. So what messaging queue provides, they provide the decoupling and provide this security and fault tolerance, right? One more thing. So we have producer here, we have consumer here, and these were sending data directly. And we know that the capacity of producer and consumer are processing messages different. So, and even we know that if this machine is producing 10 million messages today, and it may produce 100 million messages today, we cannot guarantee that my consumer can consume it. So we put MQ in between here. We know this thing from our conversation. But what about the guarantee that MQ can store 100 million messages on any given day? So to answer this question, what these people did, they make this MQS distributed framework, same like our SDFS or same like our MapReduce, same like our Spark application. So what they say, that if my system is able to handle 10 million, and if I want my system to handle 100 million, then I'll add one more machine. And this this addition of the machines is super easy. You do not need to worry about it. You just need to add the machine. Like same way this is called horizontal scalability. So your system is horizontally scalable without even worrying about how you need to add machine. It won't be a typical complication, and you can run them in the when your application is in runtime. There's no downtime, right? So this is what it means, that there will be granular scalability, right? So now we came to know that the messaging queue, the distributed messaging queue will give us a lot of benefits, right? So now a few more benefits. We have covered decoupling, we have covered scalability, right? So now let's see what other messages are. We have covered persistence. It means it can store data. It crashes, bugs, error are part of this. If your data is not persisted, it is gone forever. MQ provide this data persistency. Queues mitigate this by persisting data until it has fully processed, right? And then traffic spikes, I have explained it, that if it gone from 10 million to 100 million, we can be able to add our more machines and make our architecture more scalable, right? And then one important thing about MQ is we can monitor how it's performing. Then the sixth thing is synchronous communication, right? And that's all I think. So these all common across all different data processing application. For example, ordering, delivery. Ordering means messaging queues are inherently ordered, capable of providing guarantee that data will be processed in a specific order, right? We can define this order into our application. We can, into our Kafka or into any messaging queue, we can have semantics. For example, at one semantics, max one semantics, exactly one semantics, something like this, right? So now in last 15 minutes, we have covered why do we need a messaging queue. And one of the most famous and most reliable, and lot of companies in the world are using it, that distributed computing, distributed messaging queue is called Kafka. Okay, now let's jump to Kafka. So now we know, before we talked about Kafka, that Kafka has something. Kafka sits between your producer and your consumer. And we know one thing about Kafka, that Kafka is not a single machine. It is combination of multiple machines. We know this thing. Even though we haven't touched the Kafka, but we know this thing about Kafka. Why we know about this thing? Because Kafka is nothing but a messaging queue. We know this thing, right? So it is a machine which will allow you to decouple application, which will allow your producer and consumer to work asynchronously. We know about all these things. Now let's see what Kafka is in reality, right? How Kafka is implemented and what Kafka is all about. Let's jump there. Okay, so now one more thing, right? In the form of decoupling. So let's say we have our producers here and we have our consumers here, and there's nothing in between. So what I want, that my database server needs to read data from each of the client. For example, my database server needs to read data from front end, from Hadoop, from database slave, from chat server, from my payment application. So what I need to do, I need to have a connectivity between here and here, 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 here. So it means I want my all the sources to read data from all the producers, right? So what it feels like here, that it's a mess, right? We don't know which, let's say there is some fault here somewhere into some connection. We won't even know that where is the fault, right? And what it means, that on any particular system which is producing messages, there is a lot of load. Let's say right now there are 5 systems here, right? If these systems are become 500, what that means, that there will be 500 connections here. It will impact the overall performance of my producer, right? So rather than doing this, what these people suggested, why not put something, let's say, called Kafka or messaging queue in between. So what these people say, that let's put Kafka as a messaging queue in between of your producers and your consumers. So your Kafka, like what they want now, that your producer will publish or push the messages into Kafka, and your consumer will subscribe to it. So there are two new terms came. One is called publish, and other is called subscribe. Right? Publish is a synonym for push. Subscribe is a synonym for pull. So what Kafka says, that rather than I connect with all the source system, let the source system connect with me. Whenever they have messages, they can publish to me, and whenever consumer wants to read messages, they can consume, they can pull the messages. So what it means, that producer will push, this is called push or publish, the messages to Kafka, and consumer, this is consumer, it will subscribe or pull the messages from Kafka. So Kafka is also called publish and subscribe message. So it's also called pub sub. So pub means publish, sub means subscribe, right? So your producer will publish the messages and consumer will subscribe the messages. Simple, right? Now the question arises, how Kafka is really implemented, right? So now let's go here again. So we know that Kafka is a distributed system. Kafka is a distributed, let's say this is Kafka. This is Kafka, let's say this is Kafka. So we know one thing, that Kafka is a distributed system. And when we talk about distributed system, we call it cluster. Simple, right? So what cluster means? Cluster means cluster of machines. Since Kafka is a distributed system, we call this as Kafka cluster. Simple, right? So because Kafka is a distributed system, we call it Kafka cluster. Now, behind the scene, everything is a physical machine, right? Everything is a physical machine. So let's say this is machine 1. This is machine 2. This is machine 3. Now, obviously, what is Kafka in reality? Kafka is a software. So let's say we install Kafka on this machine. Kafka here, Kafka here, Kafka here. And once Kafka is installed on some machine and it forms a cluster, these machines are interconnected using some protocols, using some port mapping and all. We call these machines a broker. Broker 1, broker 2, and broker 3. Right? So what this means? That in Kafka, there are a bunch of machines which are interacting with each other, which are independent of each other, kind of, and those machines are called brokers. We know this thing now. So, right? So in your HDFS, we have data nodes, D1, D2, D3, and you have name node here, right? So these are data nodes. You can call them as somewhere we will store the data, right? So in Kafka, we have brokers. Brokers are nothing but your machines which will make your Kafka scalable. If we need more data, if, for example, what I was giving, right? 10 million to 100 million. If we need more machine, what we can simply say, we will add more brokers, B4, B5, something like this, right? So let's jump to this theory again. So now we know one more thing, that we have a producer. So there can be multiple producers, right? And then we have Kafka cluster. What Kafka cluster is made up of? Brokers. There can be multiple brokers, and there is consumer. We know this thing now. Producer will push the message and consumer will pull the messages. Make sense? Okay. Now, I will cover Zookeeper in 2 minutes, but let it be. But we know one thing now, producer, Kafka cluster, and consumer. One more thing which came here is consumer group. Since it came here, let me cover it. So what exactly it means, that let me explain in a lot of detail, that consumer group, right? So we have a producer. This is a producer which is producing messages at 10 million per minute. Then we have a Kafka cluster of B1, B2, B3, right? Then we have a consumer. This is C1. Now let's say this increased to 100 million per minute. And as I told you, that we can increase more brokers to make use or consume these messages. But what that means, wouldn't this be a bottleneck then? Obviously, we can increase the processing power of our broker or a Kafka cluster, but what about consumer? So what these people say, that you don't need to worry. If you want to increase the processing capacity of a consumer, what you can do, you can add few consumers into a group, that's it, C1, C2, C3, and call this group as consumer group. And now your C1 can read data from B1, C2 from B2, C3 from B3 in this way, right? So in any scenario, you can have max consumer is equal to brokers or partitions. I'll cover partitions, but you can say there will be we can increase capacity on both the sides, on your Kafka side or on your consumer side. On Kafka, we are calling it Kafka cluster. On consumer side, we are calling it consumer group. Okay. So now we have covered consumer group and we know consumer group. Let's see one more thing. Okay. Now let's talk about partition. So we know, and we know few things now, that this is your Kafka cluster. This is your Kafka cluster. In this, we have broker, right? B1. And into B1, your producer is pushing some messages. We know this thing. But in reality, what is going on? That like table, right? In database, what we have, like for example, when we are talking about a database, we have table, right? Table T1. In this table, whenever we want to insert record, let's say we have multiple application, A1, A2, these all application will be writing records to the T1. It means this application A3, it means they will be writing some applications, writing some records to this T1. And then inside this, obviously there will be some physical disk, it will be stored. But what I'm trying to prove you here, that they need to have some address where they need to write the data, right? So same as this table in Kafka, we have something called topic. Okay, so this is your publisher, this is your Kafka cluster. B1 is broker 1, B2, B3, right? Let's say your 3-node Kafka cluster. So what exactly we do once we want to ask the producer to write data to this cluster? Obviously, these are physical machines, right? On which some software is installed. Now we want producer to write data to these machines. What we say to producer, that please write messages to this topic. Let's say on this machine, we have created topic T1. So what producer will be doing? Producer will be writing messages to T1 now. Okay, this T1 topic will be stored on the B1. Okay, so topic is kind of table which will be stored on your broker. Simple. Makes sense, right? So now, so we know there's something called topic, which will be the interface between your producer and your Kafka cluster. But now the question arises again, what happens if we want to do some parallel processing? If we want to do some parallel processing, this topic has one-to-one mapping with broker. So what happened to these other two brokers now? So let's say we have a 3-node Kafka cluster and we have a topic created on B1. Now how we need to make use of other 2 nodes? So what these people say, that you do not need to worry about it. What you can do, when you define this topic, when you create this topic, you can tell Kafka how many partitions you want. So the topic can be defined or distributed in partitions P1, P2, and P3. Now, this T1, topic 1, obviously, producer do not need to worry about partitions and all. This is the only thing what your consumer and your producer will see. This partitioning or whatever is kind of abstract from the outer world, right? So what I'm trying to say you here, that every topic which producer will be interacting with behind the scene will be distributed in partitions P1, P2, P3, and how many partitions you want. and these partitions will be stored on broker now, B1, B2, and B3. Make sense now? So what it means that there will be no bottleneck now. So producer will constantly pushing message topic inside with some logic will be distributed across partitions, and we are good now. So now we know that producer, topic, and partitions now. Okay. So this is what it is done here. So producer will be producing or publishing the message to topic. This topic will be further divided into partitions, and consumer will always read message from topic. No one, neither producer nor consumer, needs to worry about this partitioning and all. They do not need to know about what broker is. They do not need to know what partition is. They just need to know topic name. That's all. Topic name and what we call broker address. How many brokers are there behind the scene? They don't need to worry about it. And that's where the real beauty of the distributed computing comes in picture. Okay. So now we have covered till here, and yeah. So now I have covered topic now. In topic, we have multiple partitions, and I have covered consumer group. So now, previously what I was telling you guys, that consumer will be connecting to the broker, but in reality, they will be connecting to the partition, right? So what happened that, let's say we have consumer group 1 and consumer group 2, and we have a topic called T1, and topic T1 has 4 partitions, right? So what it will do, consumer group 1, let's say there are 4 consumers here, there will be one-to-one mapping between every partitions and consumer. So what I'm trying to say here, that single partition cannot be read by 2 consumers. Single partitions cannot be read by 2 consumers. So this is partition. This scenario, C1 and C2, won't be possible, right? But single consumer can read messages from multiple partitions. This is possible. Okay. So we know now that consumers read messages from partitions, but as a developer, as the end user, you do not need to worry about this complexity. Behind the scene, your Kafka application is doing this for you. Okay. Okay, so this is good. Okay, now one more important thing. So we know that topic is divided into partitions P1, P2, P3, and P4. Now what Kafka says, that in each partition, how I'm maintaining the messages is by offsets. So what it do, let's say the first message arrived here. There is a producer here, right? It is producing the messages. First message arrived here, and it goes to partition 1. So what it will do, it will create a queue kind of thing, and it will, once it's read the first message, it will hit it here, second message here, third message here, fourth message here. What we can say, that it is appending the messages into some queue, and it is numbering that queue, right? So what in Kafka language, we call this numbering as offset. Okay, so an offset is the what I can say, it is in the appending mode. So into this case, what we can see, that there are 4 partitions. The partition will always start from 0. Offset will always start from 0. So the numbering in Kafka will always start from 0, right? And all the new writes will be towards the tail. So what we can see here, the lesser the offset is, the older the message is, right? The more newer the higher the offset is, the newer the message is. Simple. So it flows like this, right? So let me cover before I jump ahead. So we have producer, then we have topic here in between. This topic is divided into multiple partition, P1, P2, P3. These partitions are inside B1, B2, B3. This B1, B2, B3 are called your Kafka cluster, right? And this P1, P2, and P3 offset associated with them. 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, like for this as well, right? And then there will be a consumer group or consumer. So C1, C2, C3, they will be inside some consumer group, and this consumer group will be subscribed to these partitions like this. So we have covered till here. So we know partition, we know topic, we know brokers, we know consumer group, right? Now, let's see one more thing. Okay, so now let's talk about one more thing. Whenever we are talking about distributed computing or distributed storage, we talk about two things. We talk about fault tolerance and replication. We talk about this thing, right? In any distributed computing, we talk about this. So now what we are doing, we are dividing the topic into partition, P1, P2, P3. We know this thing. But what happens if this B1, broker 1, goes down? It means our data is lost. Our system is not fault tolerant. So what Kafka says that, guys, you can do one thing. You can create the topic. Once you create the topic, you can say how many partitions you want. Let's say partition 3, and how many replications of these partitions you want. Let's say replication 3. So in this case, what it will do? Let's say there are 3 brokers. P1 is here, P2 is here, P3 is here. So it will say P1 here, P2 here. It will say it's P2 and P3, P1 here, and P2 and P3 here. So it means every machine will have 3 copies now. So this is how Kafka behaves or prevent fault tolerance, achieves fault tolerance using replication. So it means every partition will have some replication. That replication, it depends on some replication factor, which we define once we create the topic. So what we can see here, same as database, once we define the table, we define the topic. And once we define the topic, we define everything, whatever partition we want, how many replication we want. So now we know that every partition will have some replication, right? So replication is covered now. So let's cover one more thing. Okay, so now we talk about replication. But when we talk about replication, so let's say we have our partition 1. This is on node 1 or B1. On B2 also, we have the replica of partition 1. On B3 also, we have replication of partition 1. Same, right? Because we have created a replica. So what Kafka says that out of these 3 partitions, I will allocate one of them as leader, and 2 of them are follower. I will explain it in detail, but this is what Kafka says. So Kafka says, I will assign one of them as leader and other are of followers, right? Now, the question arises, what is the benefit of this? The benefit of this is, see, this is your Kafka cluster. You know this thing. This is your producer. This is your consumer. Producer is producing messages to the topic. Topic is kind of writing message to P1. Now, the question arises, on which partition your producer needs to write messages. If it writes messages to all the 3 replicas, there will be a lot of latency. If your consumer read messages from different partitions or different replicas, there will be latency. So what Kafka says, I will assign one leader, and as a producer or consumer, you just need to interact with this leader. How the leader is interacted or whatever leader is chosen, that's a different story. We'll cover it later. But out of 3 replicas, there will be only one leader. Okay. So I think we have covered everything now. So this diagram is very comprehensive. So we have producer. Producer sends messages to one topic at a time. Topic has 0 or more producers sending them to topic, sending the messages. Then when we talk about topic, a consumer subscribes to one or more topics, right? And consumer can be part of one or more consumer group, like one consumer group. And then topic is the part of partition. Partition has some replicas. Replicas will have only one leader and others are following replicas. These replicas will be stored on broker. This broker will be stored on cluster. Simple, right? If you want, I can write it down. It's very simple. So this is your topic. Topic will be divided into partitions, P1, P2, P3. Partitions will be replicated into multiple nodes, and these partitions will be read by the consumer group C1, C2, C3. There will be connection here, and producer will be publishing here. So you have producer, topic, partitions, and they will have offset. Partition will have offset, and now the producer will be writing messages to the latest offset. So let's say this is 11, 12, and the producer will be writing message to 13th offset, the latest one. Okay. So this is all about Kafka theory. So now we have covered almost everything, right? Did I miss anything here? Again, the same thing. So this is producer. It is producing message to topic 1, topic 2, topic 3. We have consumer. There can be consumer, or there can be consumer group. Topics are divided into partitions. Partitions are divided into offsets. Same thing, right? Okay. And then we have partition as leader partition and follower partition. Now, one thing I missed. That one thing is Zookeeper. That one thing is Zookeeper. So now, the question, there's so many components. You guys must be aware of. There's so many components. There are brokers, there are consumers, there are offset, there is leader, a lot of things, right? The question arises, who is maintaining this metadata? Who is keeping track? Who is leader? Which broker is active? What is the offset? Till where the, like, lot of metadata. The whole responsibility goes on the shoulder of Zookeeper. So Zookeeper is the component which is maintaining which brokers are alive, who is leader, right? Which partition is active, which machine is active. Now let's see what broker, Zookeeper do for us. Okay. So Kafka uses Zookeeper to do the leadership election of the Kafka broker and topic partition pair. Kafka uses Zookeeper to manage service directory for Kafka brokers that form the cluster. Okay, so it means how many brokers are active. Zookeeper send messages to change of topology. Let's say if we have one node added, then it will be added to the Zookeeper metadata. Okay. Apart from that, Zookeeper do a lot of things. So whenever any new member came to the cluster, it means whenever any new B1, B2 broker came to cluster, it will be added to Zookeeper metadata. Zookeeper maintains the ACL, means access control list. So it means, in simple terms, who can read the messages? That thing is maintained inside Zookeeper. The second thing is configuration of topics. The configuration of topics means number of partition for, like, for example, this thing, number of partition for each topic, the location for the replicas, the list of configuration overrides. So it means all this metadata, like how many partition each topic has, how many replicas each partition has, where these replicas are stored. So it means all this information has been stored into Zookeeper's memory. So Zookeeper is the main component of Kafka, but in the newer version of Kafka, people or researchers are trying to get rid of Zookeeper. I'll cover it later, but right now, let's see where Zookeeper sits. So this is how Zookeeper interact with, right? Okay. So producer first connect the Zookeeper, get the broker ID, and then push the messages to the broker. So producer, before connecting here, it will connect to Zookeeper, take the address of the broker, and then push the messages. So this is your first, this is your second step. Make sense? In the same way, what consumer will be doing, consumer will pull the messages and update the offset here. So 1 and 2. So Zookeeper, what we can say that it is maintaining all the metadata. And that's where Zookeeper is very important. If Zookeeper is gone, it means we don't know till what messages we have read, till what offset we have read the messages, how many brokers are active, how many replicas are active, what permission what machine has, we don't know. So that's where Zookeeper is very important component, right? This is good. So let's see if I missed something. Okay, one more thing actually I missed, and let me think. So we know that topic has partitions. We know this thing. P1, P2, P3. But the question arises how these partitions are stored behind the scene. How these partitions are stored behind the scene. So these partitions will have replicas. So let's say I'm just making replicas. R1, R2, R3. Right? So now the question arises how these replicas are stored. So you will say partition is stored as replicas. Now the next question is how replicas are stored. So the storage of Kafka is into log. So everything will be stored as a log, right? So what log means? What your log means? So log is a file, simple file, in which you can only append the data. So everything in Kafka behind the scene is a log file, right? So if we have 3 replicas, then we can have multiple log files. I'll cover that. But behind the scene, everything inside Kafka has been stored as log file, and these log files are called segment. Okay, so now we have covered topic, partition, replicas, log file, segment. So we have covered almost everything what is there in the Kafka ecosystem. Now let's see the practical applications. Okay, so what I did, let me see if I missed something before. So I think I have covered almost everything. Okay. Messaging queues we talked about. This we will cover. So we have covered topic, we have covered partition, we have covered segment. The partition is physically composed of multiple segments. We have covered message. So in Kafka, every event is called message. Every piece of data actually stored in each segment is a file, is a message. Okay. So, and we have covered offset. What offset is? Each partition consists of series of orderly and immutable messages which are continuously appended to the partition. Each message in the partition has continuous serial number called offset, which is used to uniquely identify the message. Okay, since this line came here, now let me cover this in detail. If I ask you what is the, okay, in simple terms, so I have multiple messages coming, M1, M2, M3, and these messages have been stored to some topic, then to some partition, and then to some segment, right? This is how it works. So if I ask you, I need to read this message into this Kafka ecosystem. So what is the exact address? Go to this topic, then from this topic, go to this partition, from this partition, go to this segment. So it means to identify any message, we need to have 3 systems or 3 identities with us: topic, partition, and segment. That's what it is written here, right? Yeah, so this all is covered. Let's jump into 10-15 minutes practical session. Okay, so what I did today, I'm not sure if you guys have Unix system, Mac, well and good. If you guys have Windows system, I prefer to work on Linux based system. So what I did today, I installed WSL. That is, when you go to this store, right? When you go to the store, Microsoft Store, and you go to search and you write Ubuntu, right? And in fact, write ASL. So what you can, when you write ASL here, you will find lot of where's the app? Actually, something is wrong. Anyways, when you write Ubuntu here, and you can download Ubuntu as a subsystem onto Windows. Subsystem onto Windows. Okay. So what I did today, I downloaded this into my Windows machine because I don't have Mac or a Linux machine with me, and I installed it. Right. So this machine is installed. Then what I did here, I installed this Kafka onto here. Okay. I won't be covering how to install Kafka. It's very easy thing. When you go to Google, right? You will say install Kafka on Ubuntu 20 point whatever version you have. You can open any link. 1-to-1 line is here. Like it's very easy tutorial. Very easy tutorial. Okay. So I have installed it. Now let me show you how it looks like, the theory which I tell you, how it fits into practical. Okay. So let me do one thing. I will close everything, and in fact, let's do one thing. Let's close everything what I have, and let's start everything from beginning. Okay. So let's do one thing. cd $home. So I came to home, and now let me, can you guys see the screen properly? Okay. So I have installed Kafka, ls-ltr here, cd Kafka. So I have installed Kafka inside this Kafka directory. Okay. So okay, so this is interesting. So this is where I have installed my Kafka. So wherever you guys install Kafka, you will see this directory structure, right? So let me cover this directory structure in 2 minutes. So let me snipe it, and let me paste this thing onto my notepad. So let's go here and paste it. So when we see here, right? So whenever you guys install Kafka, following the instruction, it's very simple. If you want, I can cover in a lot of detail, but I don't want to waste my time there. It's easily available on Google, right? The one thing which is very important for us is 2 directories. One is bin directory. Bin means all the binaries or all the runnables or all the .sh script or .bat files are inside this directory. It means this is the major code of the Kafka. This is the code which is kind of, you can say, the main class or the runnable class or the jars of Kafka. This is the most important directory. The second important directory is config. Config means configuration. Now the question of what configuration means. Configuration means on which port I need to run my Kafka, where I need to store my logs, where I need to store my Zookeeper, like what is my Zookeeper port, different kind of stuff, right? So let's see how it looks like. So first, let's see what is there inside bin. So cd bin, right? And then say ls-ltr. So what we can see here, I'm not sure how much green is visible to you guys, but what we can see here, we have all the shell scripts, and these shell scripts are very easy to read. For example, we know that this is Zookeeper shell, Zookeeper start, Zookeeper stop, and then we have consumer, right? Kafka consumer, performance test, Kafka producer, whatever, different kind of shell scripts. We know this thing now. So bin file will have all the binaries or all the shell scripts which will help you to run your producer and consumer. Now let's see what is there inside config, right? So let's go for config. So inside config, what we can see that inside config also we have different kind of config properties. For example, server properties means your Kafka broker. Okay, before I go here, in simple terms, in Kafka language, the server is broker always. So don't get confused. Server in Kafka is broker, or broker in Kafka is server. They are interchangeably used. Okay. So what we have here, server properties, and then we have Zookeeper properties, and we have different kind of properties. But for us, only two properties are very important: Zookeeper properties and server properties. Let's see them one by one. VI Zookeeper properties. So in the Zookeeper property, what we are seeing here, that the target directory or the data directory for Zookeeper is temp. We do not need to worry about it. The most important thing is on which port Zookeeper has been reading and writing messages, or from which port Zookeeper is communicating. That port is 2181. Okay, only this thing is important in this property. And then let's see your server.properties. Server1.properties. Inside this is your broker, right? So every broker has some broker ID. We know this thing. So the first important property in any broker or in any server is your broker ID. So first we need to define your broker ID, broker.id1. Now the second thing is on which port this broker will communicate. So for example, we can say on which port this broker will listen to. So we can say that this broker will be listening to 9093 port, or any port you can say here, right? The next thing is this one. Which port or which directory this broker will be storing all the logs or all the segments or all the messages. So in Kafka, your data will be stored as log. We know this thing. So what we say, log directory is temp broker1. We can say any broker directory, but I have made broker1. So till now everything's clear, right? So two important config file, zookeeper.config, server.config, right? So we know this thing. Now we know one thing, that Zookeeper is the most important component because it maintains the metadata, right? It means before we start our Kafka cluster, before we start our broker, before we start our consumer, before we start our producer, we need to start Zookeeper. Now the question arises, how to start Zookeeper? The answer is very simple. You need to run zookeeper start.sh script from bin folder, and you need to use zookeeper.properties folder from config folder. Simple, right? Let's see the command quickly. So what we do here, that from home Kafka, we are using Zookeeper server and the start.sh, and which property we need to use to start the Zookeeper? We need to use zookeeper.properties, right? So let's go here. Let's open one more window here, right? That's good, it's open. And let's copy and paste that command. So let's see if it is working. We haven't changed anything here. So let's run it. Let's see if it's working. So Zookeeper, if Zookeeper is started, then we will start what it is saying. Okay, 1 second. Let me do one thing. I will install, I will log in as Kafka user, and then I will say sudo. Sudo means using super user, and let's try to run it. Let's see. Okay, this time it worked. So it means it will need a sudo permission to start the Zookeeper into my machine. Okay, so now Zookeeper has been started here. Perfect. So it means our Zookeeper started. Now what we need to do? We need to start one producer and then one consumer. Let me start one more node here, and inside this, so when we start the producer or consumer, right? So before we start producer or consumer, so we have started the Zookeeper. This thing is done, right? Now Zookeeper needs to interact with brokers B1, B2. So it means we need to create the broker, and broker is nothing but server, right? So it means we need to start the server first. So what we need to do for servers, we need to start the server.properties. So let's start it. Okay, so let's go here and let's log in as Kafka again, and Kafka, and I'm starting one server. So Let's copy this again and let's paste this. I'm typing the password. So this will start my broker B1 using server.properties. Okay, it will tell you the in the end when it is successful, it will tell me which broker it has started. Okay, and now once this broker is started, we need to start two more things: producer and consumer, right? And let it done. So what it is saying, Zookeeper is, let me see quickly here. So basically it started Zookeeper here. Let me start again, 1 second. In fact, let's say I want to start using server bundle properties. Let's see this time. Opening the socket connection with this. 1 second, let me read it. Basically, I have hard shut down the machine for you guys. That's where some of the properties are not closed. Let's see quickly. So timeout, waiting the connection, state connecting, info shutdown. Let's see. Service status all. Not sure. Just one more minute. So let's see. Control C here. I have closed the Zookeeper. What I'm doing here, I'm saying Zookeeper start. Let's start the Zookeeper again. Okay. It looks like Zookeeper is not starting for my machine, but let's see. Okay, so let's see here now. Basically, it should give us some messages that Zookeeper has started successfully. In fact, it is not giving us messages. Anyways, let me try again if it's working. Else, I'll restart this machine. Okay. What I did, I have closed all the windows from here. I should have closed the processes. Okay. Let's for 1 second more. Yeah, it's not working actually because my Zookeeper is not starting. Control C again. Let me close this quickly. Let me close this, E1, close this. Let's see if our Ubuntu is working now. So what I want to start Zookeeper, right? Let's see if it is working like this without going to Kafka. So this one, and let's put the password here, and let's see. If it won't work, I will just close it, but let's see, okay, in 1 second. Meanwhile, let's do one more thing to debug. go here, and let's say we need to go to Kafka and pwd and then ls-ltr cd Kafka cd config vi zookeeper dot properties. And have we changed anything here? No, that's good. And let me try again the same command. Here itself. Sorry guys, Control C. Let's see. Else I'll cover it tomorrow. Seems like it worked. Yeah, this time it worked. Okay, so I think my ports were blocked because I've closed the window. Okay, so this time it worked. Anyways, it is working, so we are good. That's good. So what we did, we started the Zookeeper, we started the broker, and to start the broker, what we did, we said Kafka server start.sh, and we pass our server properties, that is our broker properties. Now let's create one topic. Okay, so create the topic, we will be using this shell script, topic Kafka topic.sh, and we will be using -- create flag. Then we need to give -- topic name. Then we need to give where our brokers are there. So brokers are given by the properties called, broker address is given by the properties called bootstrap server. Okay, and then we will give the broker name or broker server here. So let me do one thing before I jump there. I have used server.properties, right? Let's do one thing quickly. Let's open one more window and pwd, and let's go to Kafka, and then go pwd within Kafka cd Kafka and config, and then vi server dot properties. I just need to see the port here. So what port we are using? Just 1 second. 9092, right? Because I'm just validating. So we are using 9092 port. So into our command, this command, we are using 9092 port. Perfect. So it means our bootstrap server or our topic will be created on this particular broker, right? We want only one partition because we have only one broker. Simple. We want the replication factor as 1. So let's try to run this. And let's say we want to create a topic called first _ topic. So this command is clear, right? In fact, when I paste it, I'll explain it again. So what I'm doing now, so this is my shell script Kafka topic.sh. I'm using the create flag. I'm using topic to give the topic name. I'm giving the address of my broker, and then I'm replication factor is 1 and partition is 1. This is good, right? In fact, let's maximize this so it should be visible. When I hit enter, it will give me one message that my topic is created. Let's see. Perfect. So what it says, the topic has been created for you. The name of the topic is first _ topic. It makes sense. Let's do one thing now. Let's start one producer which will publish messages to this topic. So what is our topic name? First _ topic. So we will paste our topic name here. So when we want to start the producer, we will be using Kafka console-producer.sh, and in producer also we need to give the broker list on which broker it needs to publish the messages, and on that broker on which topic it needs to publish, right? So let's do now. So let's paste it here, and it should give me some new console. It means some new command line. Let's see. if it works. Okay, so if you see here, it gave me new command line here. So my zookeeper done, my broker done, it means my server.sh done, my producer done. Now let's start the consumer, right? So on the consumer, we need to change which topic we need to read from. We need to read from first underscore topic. From where we need, so obviously, so when we talk about consuming the right, so in producer we have offsets 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. From where we need to read the partition or topic. Let's say we need to read from beginning. So we need to give from beginning here, and that's why I have given from beginning, right? This is good. And from where we need to read? What is the broker address? Server address is this, and we are using consumer.sh, right? So let's see. So let's start one more window, and inside this window, let me start this. So let's do one thing. So okay, so what I'll do, I will write something here. Let me minimize this like this, and let me maximize this. Okay, so how I can do it? In fact, let's do one thing. So I'll write something here. Hello guys, hope you are enjoying the class, and I hit enter. Then see now what exactly is going on here. Now let me explain it on paper. So I write something here, and it came onto this console. So I write something on my producer is populating or producing some messages. It is going to broker, it is going to some partition, and then it is coming to the consumer. So behind the scene, as I was explaining you guys, there should be some implementation. So before I go to paper, let's go here. Let's see the implementation. So let's start one more window, okay? And let's go to Kafka, and let's go to okay, so let's go to config first. cd Kafka config vi, and which broker I have started? I have started broker using server.config, right? I have started using this property. What I need to see here, where I'm storing my logs or my messages. So I'm storing my logs in broker 0. Okay, so I'm just copying it and I'm coming out of it. So I'm going to cd this and this, and then I'm doing lsf and ltr. So what is my topic name? First topic. Ideally the topic should be here. So let's maximize it. What I can see, oh, this is good. My first topic is here. What is underscore 0? What is dash 0? This is your partition number. Since I have only one partition, this will be only having 0, and that's where it has only in one broker, right? So okay, let's come to that later, but let's go inside cd first. This I'm doing lsf and ltr. Okay, what I explained to you, that everything will be stored inside the log file. So this is your segment. Okay, so now let me jump to paper, and I'll go one by one. So let's say I want to go here. What I did now, and this is the last 15 minutes for this, or 5 minutes for this lecture. I have started the zookeeper. Zookeeper, right? Then second, I have started the broker using server.properties file. I have started the zookeeper underscore properties file, right? Zookeeper underscore properties file. So this two is done. Third, I have started. In fact, I have created one topic. created the topic name is first underscore topic. Sorry, this thing is not working. One second, guys. Third, I have created first underscore topic. Fourth, I have started the producer, which is publishing to first underscore topic. Then I have started the consumer, which is consuming from first underscore topics. These are the things what I did. Right? So this is good now. Now what is going on behind the scene? If we compare it to Kafka ecosystem, it works like this. This is your Kafka cluster. This is your Kafka cluster. Inside this Kafka cluster, you have broker 0. Only one broker, right? Inside this broker, you have only one topic. The topic name is first underscore topic. And since we have only one partition and only one replication factor, this will be start from 0. And then we have our one producer, which is producing your messages to here. And then we have one consumer, which is reading messages from here. Now we know behind the scene, everything will be stored inside log file, right? So what is our log file? Our log file is this. Inside our message or inside our topic or inside a partition, this is our log file. Or once we read this log file, now let me read this log file, vi00.log. What we can see here, hello guys, how are you enjoying the class? So it means we have proved everything what we have learned in theory, right? So it means everything is making sense. So I think this is the last topic for the today. I will stop the recording.